Yeah, good evening. Today I will be dealing with the topic acid rain. So, first of all, we'll be discussing the meaning of acid rain. What exactly is acid rain, and what are the different causes, like why the acid rain is occurring. And we'll be discussing about the various impacts and many more. So here the diagram clearly depicts about the acid rain. There are various compounds like nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, which react with the moisture in the atmosphere, that is with the water, and they undergo some chemical reactions, and finally they get converted into the sulfuric acid and the nitric acid, that is sulfuric acid H2SO4 and nitric acid HNO3. So let us discuss something about the exact definition of what it is meant by acid rain. So, what is acid rain? Acid rain is nothing but any precipitation in the form of rain, fog, mist, or snow, or that is acidified, nothing but called termed as acid rain. So here what I meant to say is that the rainfall, the precipitation can be in any form, like it can be in the raindrops, or it can be in the form of fog, mist, or snow. So what happens is with this moisture, whatever compounds we have discussed, I said that there is compounds like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, that is nitrogen dioxide and nitrous oxide. So what happens is these compounds, when they are released from various emissions by the industrial industries or the factories, so the industrial emissions, they lead the various gases like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. So what happens is they mingle up, or they mix, they get mixed up with the atmosphere, and when these compounds react with the moisture which is present in the atmosphere, it finally leads to the formation of various acids like sulfuric acid and nitric acid, which leads to the acid rain. So let us know a brief about the mechanism of acid rain. So basically, air pollution is causing from basically from burning of the fossil fuels. So what are fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are nothing but the examples like the fossils, which which are like coal, petroleum, natural gas. So these are the examples of the fossil fuels. So when we are burning these fossil fuels, that is coal. So we are using coal in the thermal power plants. So similarly, we are using the petrol and diesel in the vehicles for the transportation. So there is a lot of vehicular pollutions which are emitted into the atmosphere. So they release sulfur and nitrogen into the air, so which is like causing the air pollution, along with that leading to the like when these compounds react with the moisture present in the atmosphere, so they lead finally, they get converted into the acid rain. So when these oxides react with the moisture in the air, it leads to acid rain. So what are the different sources of acid rain? Acid rain results from polluting gases like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and formic acid, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide. Similarly, methane and chlorine. So here there is a list or a tabular column which depicts about the various compounds, like what are the compounds which are leading to the acid rain, and so here, like what are the major sources. So there are certain natural sources as well as some anthropogenic sources. So what is meant by anthropogenic sources? Anthropogenic sources is nothing but the human-made sources. Okay, the man-made. So, or we can simply say that artificial sources of sources which are causing or leading to the birth of acid rain. So there are various compounds. So namely in the two columns, natural sources and anthropogenic sources, that is human-made sources, we'll be discussing that one by one. So coming to the sulfur dioxide. So sulfur dioxide. So what are the natural sources? The natural sources are like from the birth of volcanoes. Okay, the emission of various gases when the volcanoes explode. So similarly, there is sulfur dioxide produced from the oceans. and decomposition of organic matter. Similarly, anthropogenic sources for the sulfur dioxide are like just now I told you that by burning the fossil fuels and industrial processes, industrial emissions, which leads to sulfur dioxide, sulfur and nitrogen oxides. So similarly, the coal, that is the fossil fuels, are burnt for the production of electricity in the thermal power plants. Okay, so where basically the coal is used as a fuel for the generation of the electricity. So similarly, coming to the nitrogen oxides, so similarly, there is volcanic eruptions leads to the emission or emission of various gases like sulfur and nitrogen. So similarly, lightning. So lightning also releases nitrogen dioxide. Okay, decomposition of organic matter. So when the organic matter, like the remains of the vegetables, we can say, or the crop residues, when they decompose, when the decomposition of the organic matter takes place, then that leads to the emission of nitrogen oxides. So similarly, forest fires. So when the forests are burned by accidentally, so like naturally the forest fires take place. Like when we recently when we talk when we came through the news about the California fires, that is forest fires. So what happens is when the forests are burnt, there is emission of sulfur and nitrogen oxides. So similarly, anthropogenic sources are fossil fuel burning, power plants based on soil, and biomass burning. So coming to the formic acid. So natural sources is forest fires and anthropogenic sources is biomass burning. So coming to carbon dioxide, basically the natural sources are respiration and decomposition. And coming to the human sources for carbon dioxide is fossil fuel burning and industrial process. Coming to carbon monoxide, finally, isoprene emissions by plants. So isoprene is a compound which is emitted by the plants. So that leads to the natural sources for the emission of carbon monoxide, which is very harmful to the human health. So similarly, human-made sources is biomass burning and industrial sources. So coming to the causes of acid rain. So there are already, as we discussed, there are natural causes or natural sources, and as well as the anthropogenic or human-made causes. Okay, so coming to the natural causes, like already we discussed about the volcanic emissions, similarly biological processes. Okay, and lightning. So coming to the anthropogenic causes, like industrial uh, emissions through the factories. That is mainly because of the revolution in the industrialization. So again, the emission from the motor vehicles, automobile exhaust, which is utilized for the transportation of goods and people. So coal-based power plants, which leads to the emission of various poisonous gases like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide. So again, domestic fires and smelters. Okay, so iron smelting. So when the during the production of the iron and steel, uh, whatever emissions are released from the smelters, okay, the smelting of the iron, which leads to the emission of nitrogen and sulfur oxides. So here the picture depicts about the acid rain, like whatever we discussed, like the man-made sources and the natural sources. So there are various sources here, like the eruption of the volcano, okay, and the how the acid rain is impacting the plants, okay. The pollutants mixed with water, oxygen, and other chemicals. So nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, they react with the moisture, that is the water vapor, that is water, and what they do is they finally get converted into sulfuric acid and nitric acid. Similarly, the industrial emissions, which are leading to the emission of nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide. Okay, again, the how the aquatic life is being harmed by the acid rain. So acid rain due to human activities. Already we discussed like industrial emissions is taking place for the generation of electricity. Like we are burning the fossil fuels. So fossil fuel combustion, power plants. So in the thermal power plants, we are making use of the fossil fuel coal for the generation of electricity. Similarly, vehicular emissions for the automobiles like two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, etc., for the transporting of the goods and some people. So waste incineration. So what we are doing is we are burning the waste which are generated in our day-to-day lives. Okay, so waste incineration, nothing but burning the waste materials. Okay, it can be paper or organic waste. Okay, so this leads to the pollution and the emission of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen. So chemical manufacturing and mining activities also contributing to the acid rain. So types of acid rain. Again, there are basically two types of categorization of acid deposition. So one thing is the dry deposition, and the other one is the wet deposition. So dry deposition is nothing but whenever the various emissions like sulfur dioxide and the nitrogen oxides, so they are being emitted into the atmosphere and they get settled. Okay, settled somewhere on the earth, or it can be on the buildings, or that is called a dry deposition. So dry deposition is nothing but in the absence of water vapor or absence of water or moisture. Whereas wet deposition is nothing but these compounds, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, so they get settled and they get mixed up with water vapor, that is moisture, and they get settled over somewhere. So that is called as a wet deposition. So here, here, the map, the world map depicts the areas which are affected by the acid rain. So the global problem of acid rain. Here, you can see the orange areas which are covered, like in the North America, sorry, in the North America, Europe, okay, and some parts of the Asia. That is, we can say Southeast Asia. So the the portions which are in the orange color, darker orange, they are like the areas which are mostly affected by the acid rain. So this map depicts the areas which are affected by acid rain throughout the world. So what are the impacts of acid rain? So there are various environmental impacts of acid rain. So we'll discuss one by one. So here, what is it weakens the trees. So acid rain weakens the trees. What happens is when the acid rain is taking place, it retards the phenomenon of photosynthesis. That is the generation or the production of food. Okay, from the solar energy, the solar energy is being converted into the chemical energy, right? So when the acid rain is taking place, the photosynthesis process gets reduced. That means, yeah, the retardation process takes place in the photosynthesis, which is like decreasing the production of the food. It also damages the buildings and the monuments. Okay, so acid rain reacts with the like especially the sandstone. So we'll be discussing that later, and it also degrades the water quality. So it is very well, as the water quality is degraded, it harms the aquatic life. That is the species which are living in the water bodies. So it also irritates the respiratory system. So it causes the breathing issues. Okay, for the lungs and all, so which irritates the respiratory organs of the humans as well as the living beings. So that's that is one of the problems or the impacts created by the acid rain. It also reduces the soil fertility. So the overall agriculture will be damaged. Okay, so the soil fertility will be degraded. So it also so when the soil quality is degraded, when the soil quality is degraded, what happens? It reduces the crop yields. So when the productivity of the crops, the productivity of the farmers gets reduced, and he may incur losses, and finally trapped into the debts. Okay, so harm sensitive species. So the aquatic life, whatever fishes or amphibians are there, so they will be impacted because of the acid rain. here I'll be showing the figures. So especially how the acid rain is impacting the buildings and various monuments. So there are various monuments. Okay. So the when the acid rain is like reacting on the monuments. Okay. So the statues or whatever it may be. So it leads to the change in the color. So this yellowish color you can see, right? So similarly, the this figure talks about the famous monument, the Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal was like before it was like a completely pure white marble. Okay, so nothing but we can say sandstone. Okay, so the Taj Mahal is constructed with the sandstone, so it's completely looks white in color. But because of the acid rain, that is the reaction of the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, which is leading to the formation of nitric acid and sulphuric acid, right? So that leads to the change in the color of the white marble, which is like appearing as yellowish in color. So look at this. So Taj Mahal, like before acid rain, looks pure white marble, but after the it is impacted by the acid rain, though that is completely turning into the yellowish color. So there are various measures to control the acid rain. Like we can go for the cleaner fuels. Okay, use low sulfur fuel, natural gas, or washed coal in thermal power plants. So that one thing is we can move to the non-renewable. Sorry, we can go to the we can move to the renewable sources of energy like hydropower, wind energy, right, or thermal energy. Similarly, scrubbers is one of the techniques to avoid these kind of emissions. Catalytic converters, and one more thing is shift to the renewable energy. So alternative energy sources like tidal, wind, hydropower, and even the solar energy, as we have undertaken in the Paris Climatic Conference. Okay, about establishing the International Solar Alliance. Okay, so International Solar Alliance is nothing but it is undertaken by the Paris Climate Conference, where the the tropical countries, that means the countries which are lying between 0 degree to 30 degrees north and south latitudes. So whatever countries, that is the tropical countries, receive more amount of solar energy, right? So there is ample or sufficient amount of solar energy, which helps to the generation of solar energy. Solar energy, we can reap the benefits of solar energy. So that is done by the tropical countries which are lying in the latitudes from 0 degrees to 30 degrees north and 0 degrees to 30 degrees south latitude. So they are blessed with ample or sufficient amount of solar energy. So these countries can produce more solar energy where we can generate electricity, uh, so that we can make use of that solar energy in our day-to-day lives. So that's it about the acid rain. Thank you.